welcome to another episode of the Miles Offside podcast, where we talk a little bit of football and a whole lot of nonsense. My name is Oscar Puente, also known as Footy from Afar, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts, reigning champion of FPL, Chuck Bailey, and super producer, Ian Stimpson. Boys, it's a new season!
We're back! I've put my my winner's medal on. I'm holding it up for the camera there. There you go, my little gold...
That is very small.
Ooh, resplendent. It was free from a child's magazine. We're back, baby! Summer's over. Forget about that. No more heatwave bollocks. Football. It's what we want.
Oh, man. How's Posh Island, Ian? Let's get that out of the way nice and early.
Wow. Taking a trip to Dreary Town fucking early. Jesus Christ. League One.
We've lost players. Most people are predicting we'll get in the playoffs. Yay. Yeah, I mean, that's the end of that. Let's move on.
Very good. And the fish?
Alive.
There you go. Chuck, any updates from you? How are you doing?
Life. I had COVID.
You've both had COVID. Have COVID.
Well, I have COVID at the moment.
Yeah, I am the outgoing. Oscar is incumbent. Of the COVID stakes. Yeah, that's about it, really.
Yeah, if I do make any really particularly terrible predictions, I'm going to blame it on the brain fog. Mm-hmm. So you guys can't hold it against me at the end of the year. So there you go. Just keep in mind that I am in the throes of the COVID.
That is going to be a running theme then for the rest of the year now. If we remind Oscar of anything, well, I did have COVID. Do remember that. I did have COVID.
Yeah, I did have COVID. I do have COVID. Look at me powering through, showing up
what an absolute
on the first day of the season with COVID. Yeah, a hero. Some people say hero. I say
hero.
Thank you. That is a correct word to use.
It's been like 5 days now. Stop milking it. Fuck's sake.
Yeah. You sound like Emily. No, she was like, should I take off work to take care of you? I was like, oh, I love you so much. No,
I'm playing games. It's fine.
Yeah, I'll play video games. It's fine. Well, if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. We're very happy to have you. We are one American and 2 Brits, and we try to talk about the Premier League, but often get distracted.
For 4 years now, and this is the 5th.
Season 5.
Is the 5th. Yes, as many as 5. If you're back, great. We love you. We appreciate it. Leave us a review. Tell us a friend. Join us on patreon.com/milesoffsidepod for all the good Slack and various extra goodies that we will continue to plug throughout the episode. If you found us through our series of very excellent summer fan previews with the Patreons, Chuck, that you've been doing, thank you for that. It's been amazing. We do appreciate it. And if you're new to the sport and you're looking for how to become a Premier League fan, we did have a special Patreon episode with a person who just became a fan last season, kind of going through that whole process. So that's another good one to look out for. But we're here. We're back.
Okay. Are we not talking about Agatha Christie then? Fine. Carry on.
Yeah, feels a bit disrespectful. I mean, I'll take the ego, my contribution's great. Oscar, you went on a ridiculous Star Wars experience and recorded a pod of that on a football challenge. And Ian finally got to live out his dreams by doing a whole podcast about Agatha Christie.
Part 1.
So far.
Part two incoming as well.
I've got so many notes still to do.
Yeah. Oh, if you did find us because of that Galactic Star Cruiser, thanks. Great. We don't talk about nerdy stuff, really. I mean, I'll do an occasional Patreon thing, but, if you happen to like the Premier League or want to check out soccer, stick around. You might like it.
If we're going to do, I guess we could do a nerdy hybrid. As we said before, it's season 5, episode 5, as it were. So does that mean this year is Empire Strikes Back or technically Attack of the Clones?
Let's go with Empire Strikes Back.
I would like to go with Empire Strikes Back, yeah.
Yeah. We try not to talk about clones. That's the only Star Wars movie I dislike.
Fair enough. And good to know that about 3/4 of the way through, one of us will reveal they are the other one's father. Spoiler alert.
It's Ian.
Age-wise, it's me.
It's got to be Ian. Yeah.
Daddy!
He's Adam P's dad. Are you old enough to be Adam P's dad? You might literally be.
Oh, come on. Maybe if there was some sort of secondary school scandal, but that's just an awful thing to think about.
I don't know. All right. Well, today we're going to be going through a preview of the Big Six plus Palace, which is all of the teams that had a positive expected goal difference over the last season. I'm not including Brighton. There were 7 teams, but fuck Brighton. We don't care about them.
Thank you.
If you are looking for more in-depth previews of the other teams, as I mentioned before, Chuck has been going through some of those with our Patreons that have been excellent, but we're going to keep it to really the popular ones and a bit of the promoted sides as well here. And we'll just kick things off, going backwards in expected goal difference order as the natural way should be, starting with Man City. So Man City, 93 points, 73 goal difference on 62 expected. That is an overperformance of 11. Came in first, 22 points clear of fourth. Major transfers in, Erling Haaland and Calvin Phillips. Major transfers out, Raheem Sterling, Gabriel Jesus, Alexander Zinchenko, and the one and only Fernandinho. Boys, any reason to think that they won't just run the title easily again?
Yeah, because narrative, it's more fun this way. City are, and I hope I'm not saying this out of line here, a very good team, and have shown that over many seasons now.
Hot takes.
Oh, don't touch it. Put your gloves on. Oh, it's hot. So yeah, they probably will win the league. Is that it? Is that done?
But Chuck, you don't have them on. You don't have them winning on your predictor league.
Yeah, curious, Chuck. You're the only one that does not have them in the predictor league in first place. Ian and I do. You have them in second place. So let's make the case. Why do you see them not winning?
Something to do, innit? Something to put. Flip a coin. I think it's fair to say. Do you
feel like that genuinely? Do you think it's like that close?
Well, I mean, we didn't think it would be close last year, and Liverpool got it to last day of the season, 1 point, won 2 domestic trophies, got to the Champions League final. Yeah, so, absolutely. Even though, I mean, we're starting with Man City here, but let's go on about Liverpool. They are equally great, have equally improved, I think. And so I don't think it's necessarily a done thing, especially with, as we've said many times before, the fact that they really need to get that Champions League monkey off their back and get that win. I think, again, this is now the 5th season we're going, and the 5th season we'll probably say they probably need to win it this year. But they're still gonna dominate. They're still gonna play incredibly attractive football. Adding in Calvin Phillips is a great one. He's 26, 27 in the season. He's going to improve, and Erling Haaland is one of the most exciting forward prospects in world football at the minute. So it would be ridiculous and remiss to completely write them off, but just variance really for me.
Haaland in, Sterling and Jesus out. Is that a replacement? Is that an improvement? Obviously, it's not like for like because both of those guys tend to play a little wider. But is he going to make their attack even better, or is he just going to add a different sort of dimension to it, do you think, than what they had? And I'll throw to Ian here.
Well, it's been that thing that we've said, as a lot of people have said, that Man City lack the traditional number 9, and it hasn't mattered. And then you've got a player who's scored practically won a game in the Bundesliga. And, you do hear about the sort of Bundesliga tax, where, the Premier League is a slight step up. Although I find that a little bit condescending to the Bundesliga. It's not a complete fucking farmers league, is it?
But it is lower quality. That's just a fact.
And diminishing in recent years as well, it should be said. They used to be closer to the Premier League than they are now.
That's a fair point. But it is still a physically intense league. And I think even if you were to half that rate and he get a goal every other game, you're talking about a team who have spread their goals around in the past. Last season it was the same as we said the previous 2 seasons. I think, with players getting, I think De Bruyne 15 goals, Sterling 13, and I think someone else was on double figures. It goes, they really spread them around. They've potentially got a focal point now, plus all that stuff, because I think Sterling and Jesus are both losses without a doubt, but I think we'll see Grealish's second season be fairly pivotal. I think if he does what players under Guardiola tend to do, then I think it will be pretty hard to beat them. I know that's putting that all on one player, but he was an expensive player. He's incredibly dynamic with his runs forward into the final third, ball carrying and that. And I just think with Haaland on the end of those opportunities that Grealish will make, if Grealish hits the ground running this season, I think Man City could be completely unstoppable, over 100 goals type scenario. I think it could be silly.
I think 100 goals is definitely in play. Haaland take this with a million grains of salt because it's summer, but like he did score 11 minutes into his debut. And it was against Munich, yes. I think, right? Wasn't it against Bayern Munich? Like it was against a real team, not an MLS team. And I don't know. Is there any concern that he won't fit tactically? How's his ball retention, his build-up plays? He seems to be more of a big, fast, get in behind and score kind of guy. Do we think that Pep can like get him early enough? He's only 22, so like he's going to be tactically pliable, let's say, moldable. And I could see him, Foden, and Grealish really taking off at the front. But Chuck, do you think that there's any reason to think that he might not fit tactically with them, or do you think that it's just going to be a nice plug and play and kind of do the old Aguero stuff?
I think in certain ways it's going to be an irrelevance if he doesn't get the style, because he does have the quality and good enough to just make it work. And he is 6'4", he is lightning fast, he is massive, has strength, and is very intelligent and has great movement in the box. And so I think that part of his game, and an
incredible finisher, overperforms his XG all the time. On top of everything you've just said.
Yep, and I think if City get to that same kind of way of get to the byline, make cuts, but cutting the ball back and that kind of stuff with Grealish, Foden, De Bruyne potentially playing balls over the top, Mahrez playing tricky down the wing. Who else have they got? Rodri driving forward, Joao Cancelo if he pushes up into the front. And so, I think there'll be a bit of an adaptation. I think he's probably going to have, as Pep has said, his minutes managed to make sure he's most efficient, because he doesn't need to be running to the ground.
And he does have an injury history that should be noted as well. At a young age as well, which is always a little troubling to have that many injuries that early.
Yep, and there's a lot of fixture congestion, especially this year. He isn't going to the World Cup, which helps. But they also have Julian Alvarez, who's very highly rated, who can come in and still probably almost certainly do a job if Man City scouted him. But I think the most interesting thing is kind of taking the trio of outs, maybe to kind of round off this City talk, because we're very much treading well-known ground here. But I feel like the three outs of Sterling, Jesus and Zinchenko are interesting in that they are two quote-unquote direct rivals, and they're deals that kind of make sense and benefit everyone in a way, especially the Sterling one. I mean, I guess this is a bit biasy for me, but last year, I pretty sure in this podcast said in last summer that City should sell Sterling for 50 million quid, because we've said it before, sometimes you need to sell those players at their peak. He is now, De Bruyne is now the only player that was at City when Pep came in.
Wow.
I think
that's crazy.
He's the only one. So Pep has managed to build that entire team and got more coming, and it's very young. And so I think Sterling going at 27 years old, which is still like he's just going into his prime. They paid 50 million. They sold him for 50 million. And they've got ready-made replacements, so don't miss him. Similarly, Gabriel Jesus to Arsenal, we'll come on to that later, I think is a fantastic one that improves that squad. And Zinchenko, again, gets a chance to flourish more under the Arsenal system. So I think that's really interesting, the fact that, and maybe as a wider comment, Oscar, I know we've spoken about this briefly, but with the cost of players, wages, that kind of thing, pretty soon, Barcelona and economic levers aside, pretty much Premier League teams are only going to be able to afford the Premier League player, or Premier League players are only going to be able to be afforded by other Premier League teams. Yeah,
we had been trending in this direction even before the pandemic, and obviously the pandemic finances just fucked everything in so many different places that it contracted the market even more so. Other than like PSG, Munich, and Madrid, and through all sorts of dodgy accounting, Barcelona, no one can afford the wages that like Premier League players, even at mid-table teams, command, let alone like at, the big six, who do pay exorbitant fees and wages to their players. So it is going to be a case of like the market is so small that if you want to sell a player from a top team, you can only afford to sell them really to the other big six teams most of the time. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more of this. It reminds me of the mid-2000s when I first came into the Premier League. You would see transfers between like United and Chelsea, or Chelsea to Arsenal, or, all those sorts of teams back in the day. And I do think we're entering that era as well now, like especially since the Super League didn't happen. That only makes the financial situation for all the other countries and all the other leagues, just worse. And now they're talking about UEFA's being like, well, because of Russia, we might not actually give you all the COVID relief that we planned. I don't know if you guys saw that story from The Athletic, but £2 billion, I think it was, might have been euros. 2 billion is still a massive number. Of planned COVID relief, they're kind of being like, well, the global economy, blah, blah. They're like backtracking on that. And I think that would really exacerbate that problem and just make it even more accelerated to the place where only Premier League clubs can afford Premier League players, basically. And that seems to be where we're headed. But yeah, this does seem to be a case of like, those are win-win for both sides. Like, I think that is a good sale for City, Sterling specifically, but also Jesus and Zinchenko. And also equally good purchases for the clubs that they went to. So that's something definitely to keep an eye on. We'll see. There's a lot of transfer window left. We're starting the season early, but the transfer window is going to the regular time. So we're going to be like several games in.
Bulked up by, so many teams went on international tours. I think that they're pre-arranged from a few years ago and postponed. We've got the rule changes with 5 subs now in the Premier League, the last one to kind of bring that in. Obviously, the increase in competitions early. All of the Champions League group stages are basically done by November.
Yeah, because of the World Cup in the middle of the year really like fucks the schedule completely in a bunch of different ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot going on and a lot of impetus on clubs to get stuff done early that even now, like you said, there's still, isn't it 1st of September the window closes? And according to transfermarket.com, Premier League spending is over $1 billion already. So,
and we'll be 5 games into the season by the time that happens. But clubs will have been able to. 5 games is a decent, a relatively decent sample size to assess where you're at and what weaknesses you've got early on. There's going to be time for clubs to go, shit, we were in trouble here, let's fix this. Whereas you maybe don't always get quite that level of time.
Yeah, 5 games is about where I start to actually look at the XG numbers as hinting towards a trend. 10 games is really like the sort of stated, like this is when the XG is true, or not true, but you know what I mean. But 5 is when you start to like reasonably look at it and say like this might be telling us some stuff.
Especially with the richer clubs, and maybe we'll see this a bit with Newcastle, who relative to expectation have been quite quiet. You might see where clubs that are in leagues that are potentially not going to be as lucrative, such as your Liga, lower down in the Bundesliga, La Liga, that kind of thing. That's kind of when the brinkmanship of the Premier League money kind of comes off. They start saying 20 million at the start of the window, but then all of a sudden you get the structured deals where it's at 8 million, and all of a sudden the budgets go a lot further, which I think we'll see quite a lot of activity coming up to that point as well.
La Liga especially is in like really dire financial straits right now. Like other than Madrid and Barca's shenanigans,
they are in dire financial straits, but just in the medium to long term, not in the short term, since they just sold 25% of their TV rights for the next 25 years to one company, and they still have more economic levers they're willing to pull, and still can't register all the players they've signed.
Or pay the players that they already have signed.
Yeah.
Which is insane. Mad. But we could do a whole Barcelona pod. So let's move on. To Liverpool, the other sort of title favorite. Let me give their numbers from last season. 92 points, 68 goal difference on 55 expected goal difference, so 13 above. They finished second, 1 point behind City, and 21 points clear of fourth. Chuck, you have them finishing first. Ian and I both have them in second. And only a couple of major transfers. Darwin Núñez in to replace the outgoing Sadio Mane, who moved on. I think that's a pretty like for like, other than one is much younger. And to put the Premier League title numbers according to 538 here, because I didn't want to give it as a spoiler with City. City's at 46, Liverpool's at 30. So those are the two big ones. There's only 3 teams in double digits. And those are the two obviously biggest ones. Do we think that Liverpool are going to run closer to City this year? They were already only a point behind. Do we think City's going to pull away? Do they have a chance? Where do we have them? And I'll start this time. And I'll say that I think that they're basically the same as they were last year. I don't think that Núñez is much of a loss. I trust them to have done their analytics really well because they have shown that over the last, basically since the Red Sox took over, to do a fantastic job with the analytics, with their astrophysicists running their data departments. That he'll be a capable Mane replacement. We have Jota, we have Diaz already in there. So I think they'll be as good as they were last year. I don't see them having a drop-off at all. And they were the best Liverpool team of the Klopp era last year, despite the not winning the title. Like, they were right fucking there. And I think by the underlying numbers, they were the best team.
I mean, we joked about it at the back end of last season, and obviously it's never as simple as this, but they were 2 wins away from 4 trophies.
Yeah. The quadruple was very, very close. They were like 20 minutes away from 4 trophies, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Between like the final day of the season and the Champions League final, it was right there. Is that enough though? Is that enough, or is the Haaland transfer gonna put City on a whole new, even higher level than possible? And I'll throw to Ian first here. Ian, how are you feeling about Liverpool? You have them second. Have you reconsidered?
Yeah,
or
but no, I think what the fact that Chuck's got them in first, I think is in no way mad. It's going to be a very close run thing again. I think. I think the only reason I've gone for Liverpool 2, Man City 1 is sorry, I know we're doing Liverpool, but is Man City's defence and how little they concede anywhere near the amount of chances. And I know Liverpool aren't exactly conceding loads of goals, but it's just little things like a few more goals being conceded via set pieces. Just the odd game where their XGC goes over 1. Man City just don't do that. They don't concede more than 1 XG a game. It so rarely happens.
Against some opposition, they do.
Yeah.
Who would that be, Chuck? Have your moment.
I don't know. 4 points in the league last year. The only one to keep 2 clean sheets against City.
We might have new listeners that don't know you support Palace, and that's something you can hang your hat on.
Yeah, well, 2-0 at the Etihad. Yeah, fine, guys. Don't worry. They only lost 3 games all season. Yeah, okay, it's fair enough. Yeah. Didn't concede once to them last year. That's fine.
But I do think Liverpool's transfer business has been good, because I think I even sort of bring. Even though it was last year, like Diaz into this, because he just slotted in so well, and having that half a season now just gives me absolute confidence that he's just gonna do incredibly well this season, and probably straight from day dot.
I mean, it's probably why they were happy to just sell Mane. Like exactly. They had to kind of concentrate at this point on one or the other. Got Salah the new 3-year deal, which I think will cost them whatever it is, 50 million, I think, over 3 years, which if you think about it, for 50 million over 3 years, you can't replace Mo Salah in that team, as it were. Mm-hmm. Luis Diaz came in so quick in the position that Mane was in, he'd effectively hold him up. They've got a bit of an injury to Jota, but that will be sorted after a few games and he can come in.
From Bobby's still there. He can do a job in limited minutes.
He can, yeah.
Going into the last season as well, that's absolutely fine to have him there, and then look at your next forward replacement. And I think they're building things on the fly. And you're exactly right, Ian. Luis Diaz coming in so hot and getting the benefit of time is only going to be a good thing.
And it shouldn't be overlooked that they've got young players that are really good as well. Curtis Jones is, I think, underrated and really good.
Yeah.
Obviously, they bought
Fabio Carvalho.
Fulham, thank you. Yep. Which is definitely one for the future. What, 5 million they spent on him?
That was the one where something happened, and I think they missed the deadline. They actually wanted him a year earlier. And the classic fax machine unplugged kind of deal meant that they missed him. So I don't know if they were probably going to loan him out for that year, but they then agreed a deal that effectively Fulham knew that was then his last season he was coming. Again, 19, maybe coming up to 20-year-old, very exciting attacking prospect. But
this seems to be. I think Liverpool are really solidifying themselves as trying to build an era. And I think that was maybe something that would have been laughed at just a few years ago, maybe. I know that the Fenway Sports Group have been with them for a while now, but I think even a few years ago, if you'd have said that Liverpool were trying to build a bit more of a sort of epoch-defining, club, you'd maybe laughed at them. But I think that is happening. Klopp signed a new deal.
Yeah,
that's huge, and so. I think it's going to be incredibly close again. I just think the football gods are maybe in Man City's favour this season.
Yeah, and I think the difference for me is that Liverpool maintained, but City probably pushed, and are probably going to be even better. Just because of Haaland. Like they did striker by committee for 2 seasons. They had a Harry Kane / Lionel Messi, depending on the season we're talking about, shaped hole at the center of their defense. They never really replaced Aguero. And I think that's going to be the difference, but I don't think that Liverpool are going to by any means like fall back from where they were. I think they're still going to be like potentially pushing 100 goals also, you know? And I remember sitting here last year during the preview and talking about like, oh, are Liverpool going to fall off significantly because of the age curve? Because Firmino and Mane and Salah are all approaching 30, and they handled that transition perfectly. Like they did. Salah's really going to be the only one of those 3 guys who's still starting week in, week out. And they don't seem to have lost a step. We'll see how Nunez turns out. Like, obviously, he's a new player to the league, but even if it's Jota and Diaz as the main guys, once Jota's healthy again, like that's not a drop off on any level whatsoever.
I mean, yeah, if we say Liverpool maintaining, like that would be a negative. That would still only be losing 2 games and 92 points.
Right. Yeah.
And coming again within 20 minutes of winning 4 trophies. We covered it a bit more, obviously, on the Liverpool pod that I did with Patreon Sam. But Nunez, who's had a bit of a mixed preseason because it's preseason and these things happen, a couple of whiffs of games and then, nailed 4 against Leipzig. Everything I've heard from intelligent people who know Portuguese football say that he's going to be a perfect plug and play, A, for Klopp and B, for the Premier League, because his style is very well matched, with the caveat being that he's potentially going to be like Fernando Torres in that his style is matched perfectly with the physicality. However, because of that reason, he's not potentially going to last very long.
Interesting. Okay.
Right.
How old is he? Do you know how old he is? I don't know.
23. Just turned 23.
Okay. So he's got a good few years before his body starts to show any signs of decay.
Yeah.
Speaking of 23, so is Trent. Every time I remember that, it blows my mind.
Yeah.
Trent Alexander-Arnold is 23.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mad. And they've got, Konate, I imagine, is going to be replacing Matip and getting more minutes there. Bang, that's an immediate drop in with Van Dijk. Ian, you mentioned Curtis Jones. They've got Harvey Elliott. If they can keep Fabinho, Thiago, Keita, even last season was coming through a lot better. If they can stay fit more consistently, then they finally get more of a midfield and a midfield solidity. We kind of had centre-backs for a year, never having the same pairing. We then kind of had last year with the midfield, there was a lot of inconsistency, it feels like. Now it's just, can it all come together for them to be in a position, potentially, we may be jumping ahead and there's not a lot in this, but they want Jude Bellingham, but they're just potentially not willing to spend the 104 million that Dortmund want for him, pounds that is, at the moment. But I can see that happening because apparently they're kind of batting their eyelashes at each other. So then that is then, we're very much jumping ahead, and a year is a very long time in football. But that again continues exactly what we're saying, just tick it along, keep going at this amazing pace, and Jurgen Klopp for another 4 years is a fantastic thing for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a time to be alive.
So, over-under, we'll wrap up the Liverpool conversation here. Over-under on the number of trophies they leave at the end of the season, 1.5. Ian, over or under 1.5 trophies?
Now, what exactly are you asking me here?
So, will they win 2 trophies out of the 4, out of the quadruple?
I didn't know whether you wanted an odd situation, in which case I didn't know whether you wanted American.
No. So, over meaning they'll win 2 trophies, under meaning they'll only win 1 or less.
Well, there we go. Let's have a think then, because I just think they won't win the Premier League, but they've got pedigree in the Champions League. Mm-hmm. Guardiola hasn't won the Champions League in 12 years.
Chelsea broke him.
So could that be the thing they, like you said earlier, could that be the thing they focus on? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it, although League Cup, FA Cup, I don't know. I'm going to say no.
So you're taking the under. Chuck, are you taking over or under here?
Yeah, over.
I'll take the over as well. I think they'll do 2 cups somewhere out of the 3.
Yeah.
Like last year. So let's move on then to my beloved Chelsea. For the new listeners, I am a Chelsea fan, but I try to be as anti-biased as possible to limited degrees of success. I don't know.
Tries doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, sure. Chelsea, 74 points last season, 43 goal difference on 31 expected, so that's an overperformance of 12 goals, about the same level as City and Liverpool. They finished third, 19 points behind City and 3 points clear of fourth place. Chuck, you have them in fourth. Ian and I both have them in third in our predictor leagues. A very busy summer for Chelsea, both in terms of new ownership and all the craziness that happened at the end of last season, but also in terms of the transfers. We got Raheem Sterling from City, Kalidou Koulibaly, Conor Gallagher back from Palace. He's probably sticking around, it looks like, this season. They are still in the market for at least another one or two center backs and probably a center mid somewhere. We have sold Lukaku, Rudiger's off to Real Madrid, and Christensen off to Barcelona. Talks of Alonso and Aspi both leaving as well. Very, very, very busy times at Chelsea. So I'll save myself for last. Chuck, I'll throw to you. How are you feeling about Chelsea coming into this season?
Not good.
Okay.
Not good at all. I think there was a big fanfare and Bolly kind of moved fairly quickly and seemed like he was doing the right things with the way he was ingratiating himself to various footballing club owners around the continent. And now perhaps with a mixture of Tuchel spikiness, Barcelona continuing to shake their magic money tree, and just the natural order of things kind of hitting a bit of a stumbling block. I mean, it's quite worrying recently. Again, it's pre-season, doesn't mean much, but losing 4-0 to Arsenal.
Yeah, Tuchel threw that match with the lineup, though. He was trying to send a statement.
But then, you know...
You think, yeah?
He's giving interviews very reminiscent of a Mourinho and a Conte, and it isn't necessarily... I don't think it's going to go that well. I mean, we saw how Chelsea dropped off a lot. And I think that's potentially, it seems worse because how well Tuchel did so quickly, getting to every cup final, absolutely smashing it from the January or December when he came in to replace Frank, winning the Champions League. That if he hadn't done this might not seem as bad for him coming third last year, by a fair distance. And so I'm kind of worried because I think that there's a lot of players that need to shift out. And with the changing of ownerships, I'd be very interested to see whether they then start to go with a complete change in tack of the way Chelsea operate and you know, embracing a bit more of their common production line, to not necessarily just go all out spending year on year on year for at least a few years anyway.
Yeah, I mean, when there's new ownership, though, you usually see like one or two big summers of them trying to be like, look, no, I am committed to here. I am trying to like make a splash. And then things will settle down. We'll see that with Newcastle. We saw that when Abramovich took over. So I think we will have a lot of activity in the transfers for the next couple of years. So I don't think that's wrong necessarily. But Chelsea are the only other team with double digits percentage to win the Premier League according to 538. Ian, that's 11%. So not a significant, but, you know, non-zero. 60% to finish top four, which is the best of the not City and Liverpool teams. How are you feeling about our top four / our potential getting back in the title conversation chances? Where do you see Chelsea? You have them third, but do you have them third closer to Liverpool or do you have them third closer to Spurs / whoever comes in fourth?
I have them third closer to Spurs, Arsenal. I think Chelsea are one of the more unpredictable teams this season. I think it's I could see them finishing anywhere from third to sixth. I think sixth is unlikely, but I could see it happening. But
finished 13th in recent memory. Remember that?
I do remember that. I try to forget that, but I do remember that.
I wish we'd have been doing that season. The churn, the new ownership, it's been an incredibly tumultuous time at Chelsea. I do wonder. I think I'll keep it brief because I haven't got a great deal to say. I think you've, you know, held on to one of the more underrated players in the Premier League, Mason Mount. Again, I think he's great. I think I do go on about him, but I do think he's so good and so underrated.
He's your new Mark Noble.
He might be.
Oh,
he might be, Joe.
Okay, all right. Not a bad one. Not a bad one to pick.
Tuchel's temperament is going to be interesting this season if it doesn't start very well. You know, we've anticipated meltdowns before. It might only be pre-season, but you're already saying he's selecting lineups to send messages and stuff, you know. So as I say, I'll keep it very brief. I find them unpredictable, and I do think they're nearer to finishing third than sixth, for instance, but I think I wouldn't be surprised by anything happening with Chelsea this season. Certainly to start with.
Fair enough. I think you pretty much hit it on the head there with saying that like they have the most, let's say, the widest error bars. Like third is probably where they'll be, but like there's a lot of variance there. You guys both already kind of made the case for the negative outcome of those error bars, so I won't touch on that too much, although I will say managers get 18 months. Tuchel usually makes it about 2 seasons at a place. This is, on the other side of that, so I would not be surprised with him not being around by the end of this season. External of anything else other than like that history, I could see it going that way, but I guess I'll take the upside of it, because I do think that actually because of how last season went and because of a lot of sort of extra shit that happened, people are down on Chelsea more than they should be, which is usually not where I am coming into a season. Well, I don't know. That's not necessarily true. Whatever.
The words best team in the world were mentioned last season.
Hey, we were the best team in the world going into that season.
I had them
we were
first
anyway
in my predictor league last year.
I still think, for the record, that and this is coming from smarter people than me who do things like professionally. We were the 3rd through 5th best team in the world last year, still, despite that. Where there's just like a sort of like bias in that we know them and we see them in comparison to Liverpool and City all the time, and we don't see them in comparison to Bayern Munich and Real Madrid and other countries. So people sort of take that for granted. I still think that Chelsea were probably the 3rd through 5th, depending on, who you're asking, best team in the world last year. I also think that the reasons for our drop-off last year are reasons that you should not expect to necessarily repeat this year. Specifically, Lukaku coming in, fucking up the system tactically, not fitting, and really kind of destabilizing everything. Now that he's out, and they're going to kind of go back to Havertz probably being the number 9, flanked by Sterling and maybe Werner or Pulisic or Ziyech, depending on the day. Callum Hudson-Odoi is around again and not injured. Will sort of go back towards those first 6 months where Tuchel was around, where we were genuinely the best team in the world for 6 months. We were better than City. We beat them twice. We beat them in the Champions League final. We were fucking incredible. We weren't conceding more than like 0.4 XG for like 6 months straight. Like, we were the best team in the world for a few months there. And then last season, Lukaku came in, and the injuries to Reece and to Chile and to Conte and to, just like up and down the list.
They did destroy the whole system, didn't they?
It did. It completely fucked it. And Reece James and Chilwell especially, like, they're so important. And that they're going to be back and probably playing, like, and you never expect long-term injuries. There's no reason to suspect that they will repeat. If we can get back to sort of taking last season as a weird one-off kind of wash thing and get back to that core of players that we had when we made that Champions League run, when we were the best team in the world, which I do think there's good reason to think that we could get back there. Mm-hmm. I think we could be in the title conversation. I do think that I wish I could say that I think we're going to win the title or like be in the race, which I said going into the season last season. I have us third. I wanted to put a second or first in my predictor league, and I couldn't because of those error bars, because there is the downside so much there. But I do think that the most likely outcome is third and close to the top 2 and not as close to the other teams sort of lower down. You also have to remember that those kids, we talked about like Trent's only 23, Mount, Havertz, Pulisic, Reece James, Trevoh Chalobah, all those guys are 23 or 22. And like, there's just a natural progression that happens with players at that age, independent of anything else. They just naturally get better at the things that they do. And so there's reason to think that Chelsea will be better, independent of anything else happening just by their age profile. Like, those guys will continue to improve and continue to move on. Like, Mason Mount is an incredible player. Yeah. And with Sterling coming in, he's in his prime. He is Timo if Timo could finish chances. I think there's a lot of good reason. I was listening to Andy's episode about Chelsea that you guys did, and I was like, I'm not as down on them as everyone else seems to be. I think people forget how good we were when Reece James and Chilwell were healthy and when Tuchel first came in because of the weirdness of last season. And I think if we can stay healthy, there's no reason to think that we can't at least be hanging around in the title conversation pretty late into the season, especially with the age profile thing. The big concern is central midfield. We need to sign a central midfielder. I said that last season. We didn't even get 2,000 minutes out of Conte last season. We didn't get 2,000 minutes out of him a season and a half ago either. He's had injuries recently. He's getting older. Like, we need a central mid that can do Conte things, and we don't have a replacement for him, and we need to go out and find him. We were trying to get Frankie de Jong. Turns out he wants to take 30 million pay cut to be able to stay at Barcelona for some reason. And I haven't really heard many rumors about anything besides center backs. I do think that Koulibaly, and if we can get Koundé, is a good replacement for Rudiger. We still have Silva around. Trevoh is, again, a year older, gonna be a year better. So really, it's the central midfield is the big question mark for me. But I do think that there's a really good case for us being close to City, Liverpool, and pulling away from the pack of the other teams compared to last season. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy.
Optimistic.
Yeah. I think we have given a slightly more negative thing. You've given a slightly more positive thing. I think a tilt at the title is too much for me.
Here's what I think. Like, as much as naturally Chelsea might improve, they haven't improved as much as Liverpool and City.
Fair.
There's still a lot of question marks around. So if you get another centre-back in, which, who knows, with the Barcelona media machine, at the minute it's all saying that Koundé isn't going to Chelsea anymore. Chelsea have pulled out. He's going to Barcelona. But it is very much, they could just be spinning this. Mm-hmm. So if you get one more, you still need to understand how those three then work at the base, because you imagine it's going to be a three, especially if one of those is probably going to be Thiago Silva. Mm-hmm. I don't think necessarily you'd have him and Koulibaly in a two, even though they are both bad. Very good, very, 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 very high quality defenders. And I love Koulibaly as well. For any time I've watched him for Napoli, not that it's been a lot, I think he's fantastic. But I don't think you've improved enough. I don't think you've improved as much as Tottenham, and we look at Tottenham off the back end of last season with their momentum, added in with the Conte factor and him getting to have his whole Conte camp. And then I don't think you've got necessarily at the moment, as we see it, as much as we can comment on things being as a section of time, I don't think you've got as much of a squad unity and identity at the moment, potentially with each other, being just sorted, much of a muchness here, as Arsenal at the minute. Now, that's not to say I don't think you finish below Arsenal, no. But I think relative to if we take the end of last season to now, the team out of those five that has improved the least, I would say, is Chelsea. But they've all made improvements. And then naturally you're going to drop down without necessarily getting worse.
Yeah, I think as a Chelsea fan, it is scary to think about how much better Tottenham, Arsenal, and United probably are going to be. So I don't think Chelsea are going to drop down, like you said, but I could see them catching up and sort of squeezing.
The pressure is from below.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good place to transition to Tottenham. Tottenham 71 points last season, 29 goal difference on 26 expected. So that is an overperformance of 3, pretty much their numbers. They came in fourth, 22 points off City, 0 points off fourth because they were fourth. Big signings in Richarlison and Bissouma. Steven Bergwijn, I guess, is the biggest one out, but not really anything important. Chuck, you have them third. Ian and I both have them fourth. The big story here, I think, is Conte. A full season of Conte, a preseason of Conte. Is he going to get the best out of Kane and Son? What happens with Richarlison? All of that stuff. They scare the fuck out of me because Conte is incredible and has won the title with worse squads than this. You
haven't mentioned Ivan Perisic as well, coming in this year.
Oh, yeah, right.
Clement Longley getting as a reinforcement. They've still got Kulusevski, they've still got Bentancur, Romero. Well, Bentancur was permanent anyway, but I think Kulusevski and Romero are now in the second year of the loan deals they had.
It was an 18-month or something, yeah.
Plus the fact you've got all that time with Conte over the summer, working on their fitness, working on the way they're going to play. He's very much everyone's
and he has
said.
been, apparently, vomit-inducing training sessions, apparently.
Yeah, you look at the 28 games for which Conte was in, Tottenham had the third most points of 56. Obviously, Liverpool and City having 70 and 73. But during that time, we saw with Tottenham that there was still huge inconsistencies right up until the back stretch of the season, where, I mean, this is the fantasy football link there, that they were just scoring goals for fun at one stage. I mean, you go from February to 26th, 4 versus Leeds, 5 versus Everton, 2 versus Man United, 2 versus Brighton, 3 versus West Ham, 5 versus Newcastle, 4 versus Villa. Like, big scores. And just kind of started to click a little bit more. The same, they did that kind of through November as well, winning games. So, yeah, I think Tottenham are a very interesting prospect this season, and that's why I've got them above Chelsea. I don't necessarily think, because these things can be transitional, that potentially then when Chelsea do sort their stuff out and improve, they then jump back above Tottenham. Mm-hmm. But just as we stand right now, as I see it at the moment, with the pre-season and with how they ended and played under Conte, and that he's been backed and they've still got money to spend, I think they're just going to be great this year. Yeah,
really they frighten me because they're going to make a jump. It's just a question of how big of a jump and where does that land them. I've generally got a reputation for being down or perhaps unfairly so on Harry Kane. Historically, I don't think unfairly so because I'm just pointing out injuries and tactics and but when I think back to like that incredible Conte team, getting the most out of an aging and generally kind of slow Diego Costa tactically. And I could see Kane doing that and just like excelling because Kane is an amazing player, just limited physically and mobility because of his injury history. I don't think that that's unreasonable to say. But Conte can absolutely get the most out of that and build a system around that, especially with Son and now Richarlison coming in. That's a potentially a very, very, very scary prospect.
Well, this is it. I mean, even with the start of the season with Harry Kane, his head not being exactly at Spurs, he still ended the season playing the most outfield minutes for Spurs. He's well. Let's take Tottenham summer. The only negative I can really see is that I think they could do with strengthening at centre back, to be honest. But other than that, they've had a really good summer, and Kane's going to be coming into this season well rested, no tournament. He very rarely either has a rest or has post pre-season where his head hasn't been turned by Man City or whatever. We haven't had a sort of well rested, happy Harry Kane yet starting in August. It'll be really interesting to see how that works out. And as Chuck said, Perisic, I think they've identified issues, they've gone quickly, and now they'll have a pre-season with an incredible manager. It's all pretty good for Tottenham, and as we say, pressure on Chelsea from below. I can't see Tottenham finishing outside the top 4 myself. I think everything seems to be heading in the right direction for them, and I expect a pretty quick start for them. They've got Southampton to start the season, then Chelsea, but then it's Wolves, Nottingham Forest, West Ham, Fulham. I think they'll start fast, I think.
But that's really fun that we get Chelsea so early.
Yeah, that is fun. Yeah, you're right.
Like second game.
Chelsea, second game.
Second game, bang, fun, in. Yeah. Let's see where they're at. And that's an
definitely
early statement performance for either team, really, based on the narrative we're saying.
Yeah, and 538 has them at 42% for Champions League. So that's like the solidly pretty high up there. The closest one behind them is Arsenal at 28%, which I guess will transition there. Speaking of having really good summers and potentially moving up a lot and pushing, we have Arsenal on 69 points last season, 13 goal difference on 13 expected, 5th place, 24 short of City, but only 2 short of Tottenham. Chuck, you have them in 5th. Ian, you have them in 5th. I have them in 6th. I'm reconsidering that. Big names in Gabriel Jesus, Alexander Zinchenko, and Fabio Vieira, losing only Lacazette and Guendouzi. So, not really any major losses. They have had an excellent summer. Jesus is straight in. Again, take everything with a grain of salt in preseason, but it's better to be scoring and coming in than not in preseason. And Zinchenko's a great, great pickup. Oh, I'm frustrated at how smart of a pickup that is for them. Do we think that they could push Tottenham? Or are Tottenham going to jump so much because of Conte that it won't matter? Because I think Arsenal are going to be a lot better than they were last year.
What's good is that their main two signings know the league, know each other, know what it's like to win it, know the manager because Arteta was at City before, so there's a bit of that. And it's really exciting. I mean, they, at the minute they're still looking at a few other players, and they missed out. Arsenal fans wanted Rafinha and all of that. I don't think that's necessarily was going to be a realistic one. But they've also got very exciting right winger in Marquinhos, William Saliba, who's been loaned out for the last 3 years since they bought him, is looking great and coming in. And so I think, even more at this point of the project, as it were, finally this rebuild of just going and going and going, they've got kind of the squad happiness and vibes that Solskjaer kind of had at Man United, whilst also being in the kind of City area of, we know how we're going to play, we know what we're doing, and we know an effective way to do it, that I think is going to be really fun. I think if they were to get into the top four, it would probably be because something has gone wrong for a Tottenham, a Chelsea, hell, even if it was a Liverpool or City, that would have to be something big going wrong.
Yeah, massive. But
what's going to be interesting now is that they have European football again, which they didn't have last year. So they performed with those numbers without having to worry for the first time in a while about those trips to really long distance trips to Eastern Europe, Azerbaijan, in some cases midweek, and then coming back. So it's going to be interesting how they deal with that side of fixtures this year.
For sure. And similar to Chelsea, they are a young team that even without any major transfers, which they have had a fantastic summer, you would expect to improve, to just come 1 year older, 1 year further along the project, and 1 year better. But yeah, I don't see them actually catching up to Tottenham just because of the Conte factor of it all. But they're definitely much, much closer than I think I would have expected to give them credit for coming into this season. And certainly like halfway through last season to talk about them potentially pushing for fourth would have been unthinkable. And now with Jesus and Zinchenko, I think that they might. Stimson, how are you feeling about them?
Well, I think, weirdly, one of the negatives about Arsenal in recent years, probably for a while now, it's been the toxicity around the fan base, the complete lack of vibes, and that's...
The captaincy curse of all of their
exactly.
captains.
The whole thing's just felt really grim, to be honest. And I think that's largely been fixed. The fan base is behind Arteta. As you said, we had a young team. And I think the negatives of last season, weirdly, because the young team is what all the fans got behind. The only negatives of last season were things like being a bit impetuous. There was a lack of experience sometimes from winning positions that led to them dropping points too often, especially towards the end.
It feels bad. I feel like mental fragility, I guess, being in those situations and not knowing how to see it out. And that's what I think is interesting. You bring in Zinchenko and Jesus, who are still of a similar age profile, but are in that winning, like they know what to do, and they will have faith within the system and to be those consistent points. And that's what I think is really interesting. And they're already, Jesus as well, having the Brazilian connection with Gabriel in defence and Gabriel Martinelli, the Gabby thing that's become a bit of a joke and a meme. That I think that area is interesting. I'm really looking forward. I mean, as we record, we're about 10 days out from the Arsenal Amazon series of last season dropping. And I think that's going to be fascinating. I'm hoping they didn't do a Tottenham and drop out tons of stuff and make it too much about, just one aspect of it. But yeah, we find ourselves again in this weird area where, we've got an Arsenal team that's likeable, and you kind of want to do well from a personal perspective, as in for the players, if not for the Arsenal as an entity perspective, shall we say, because they've got Bukayo Saka is incredibly exciting, Martin Odegaard incredibly exciting, Emil Smith Rowe is even Xhaka's sorting himself out relatively these days, and their defence as well. Aaron Ramsdale just coming in and just defying everyone's expectations last year. So if they can do that again, it's only going to be good things. Even if it's just in a footballing sense, if not an achievement, because I don't think they win anything next year.
Yeah, I probably agree with that. Although they could have a run at a cup, but yeah, I think I probably agree with you. But yeah, the only reason I was pointing out the sort of youngsters as a maybe a negative from last season, as in just occasionally sort of losing points, is that they're all a year older now, and as you say, they've added people like Zinchenko. I think you could happily make Zinchenko captain, job done, and let's put that whole thing to bed as well. And it could be very positive. I agree with you. I don't see them pushing on to sort of major honours this season, but I think they'll have a tilt at top four. I don't think they'll make it, but I think they'll have a tilt. Yeah,
and I mean, Arteta's a year older and a year better too. We've been talking shit about him, or I guess I've been talking shit about him for years now, but he has slowly been progressing, finding an identity, getting better at the management thing. That's what happens over time. And I think at some point over the course of last season, he went from not a good manager to maybe a good manager to probably a good manager.
And he seems to have been trusted and given some money,
Yeah, exactly that. And he had a lot of clearing the decks to do.
Yeah,
it's evident. This squad now is... I don't have the old one in front of me, but from what I remember, it's got to be night and day, because I like this Arsenal squad.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, there's too many players I like. It's not good. I don't want to like them.
Does it feel bad inside?
Between Tottenham and Arsenal, just to wrap up the London conversation, do we think that over under 0.5 trophies for both of them combined? Ian.
What?
Will Tottenham and or Arsenal win a trophy?
Yes.
Yeah.
One of them will win one trophy?
Tottenham, yeah. No, Arsenal.
Yeah. One of them will beat Chelsea in the FA Cup, probably. We've lost 5 of the last 6 or something like that. We're always in the final, and we don't really win half of them. So then from there, let's move on to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th best team in England last season, according to the underlying numbers, and that is the one.
Manchester United, surely.
No. I know you know the answer to this, and you're being coy, but I'll give it anyway.
West Ham?
It is Crystal Palace. 48 points, 4 goal difference on 5.4 expected goal difference. They actually underperformed. They finished in 12th, despite being the 6th best team by the underlying numbers. 23 points short of 4th place. That's
Oscar,
quite a lot.
I seem to remember this time last year, everyone telling us that we would wish we'd kept Roy Hodgson. We were definitely going down. He gave us such defensive... You must be... Can you just check your numbers again when you say that we were the 6th best team last year in a rebuilding year off the back of everyone fucking writing us off?
Yes.
Fuck yeah. Fuck all of you that doubted us.
So you have him in 6th in your predictor league. I have him in 7th,
funny.
Which I had him getting relegated last year.
You're an idiot.
Ian, you have him in 11th.
Mine's complete bias. Ian's a prick for going bottom half of the table. And
I do feel like I've gone too low on that, actually.
And mine is just numbers. I'm XG, right? I believe in the stats. And the stats say that they were the 6th best. And I put him at 7th because I think United are going to get better. But big signing in, Doucouré. Martin Kelly, the big loss out. I know you're devastated.
Devo.
Go. We'll clear the way. Run. Tell us. Young, exciting attacking team. Vieira, manager.
I don't know, because I obviously in the run-up to this, I've done a lot of podcasts with people, and we've still got more to come. I don't know where this is going to fit in the pre-season pantheon, as it were. But Palace is one that I haven't really spoken about much. I mean... Everyone, I think there's been a sea change in the perception of Palace for last season, and I think
Rightly
that
so.
is embracing what we're about, embracing the area in which we geographically occupy in South London, bringing in exciting apps. I mean, YouTube compilation ballers. Your Zaha, Eze, Elise, now Malcolm Ibiwe. Luke Plange is very skillful as well. Mateta is getting a lot better on the ball, bringing in a player like Cheick Doucouré, who's incredibly highly rated and seems a bit of a coup, and potentially using us as a stepping stone, and just having the pull of. Yeah, I still have to pinch myself every now and again that actually, and at the time I was sceptical because I didn't know what he was going to be like as a manager. But the fact is that Patrick Vieira is my manager. Like, very iconic in the time of, I don't know if you were similar, Ian, maybe because you were a little bit older than me, and I'll be nice to you there. But like in the formative years of me being around football and collecting sticker albums and that, Arsenal were a dominant force and Vieira represented a lot of that. And the fact that he's in South London, he is, Senegalese, French, black, the link and the connection with the area, and all of these players similarly wanting to come and play for him is huge. And so I think that's just so fun of how we've done last year with a huge clear out, bringing in a lot of new young signings, changing our defence, our centre-back pairings, changing the midfield, a lot of the attack, and then just building on that this year with more people, offering contracts to older players and saying, look, the way we're going to operate now is that you can get 1 year extensions, that's fine, but you're only getting 1 year at a time, and we're going to discuss. And because we need to understand that we're building in a different direction. And we've improved on that again, I think, with the signings so far this year. Sam Johnson, I think, is really good as a goalkeeper, to be the replacement with Guaita, who's going to be better with his feet. Malcolm Ibiwe is very exciting. Vieira doesn't want him to go out on loan. He came to us from Derby. They're not happy about that, but he to me, image-wise, he's just Zaha. Like 10 years ago, 11 years ago. It's mad. His perception, his interviews saying people think I'm really like emotional and angry and moody, but I just want to win. I just love it. Doucouré, I've mentioned, who seems like he's just going to be able to run the midfield, which we've cried out for so long, sitting at the base of a three to allow a resurgent Eberechi Eze to come in.
I think he's going to have a hell of a season. I genuinely think he's going to have a hell of a season.
I think so. And then, Chris Richards is an American, very highly rated as a defender, kind of one to progress, can cover across the back line, centre-back, right-back maybe. He's coming from Bayern, who Vieira's announced like a week ago, but the club still hasn't. I guess they're waiting on paperwork. And I'm just really, really looking forward to seeing this team and how we did evolve over the season and learn from our mistakes and gradually pick things up, and then how we can make an impact this year. So, did you say I put Palace in sixth?
Yes, you have them in sixth. Yeah.
Part of that is just because I know I can't win the thing and just thought it would be fun. But, like you can dream at the bottom of that. Kind of the European qualifications and that kind of thing, but
Europa League qualification isn't out of the question.
Yeah,
but it would require another jump in improvement.
Yeah,
but that is not out of the question. I mean, Zaha scored you 14 goals in the league last year, and we didn't even talk about him that much.
Yeah,
like because you had other players who were doing things, and that hasn't been. We've talked about this before. That hasn't been what Palace before. It's been Zaha plus others. And it's not like that anymore. It really isn't. And
we're not a one-man team anymore. We're in a situation that Zaha's going into the last year of his contract. Who knows what could happen? Never say never. But we're like finally in a spot where we'll still miss him. Don't get me wrong, but we're not fucked.
It's not the cataclysmic event it could have been losing him, is it?
No.
And, we mentioned this with Chelsea and Arsenal. They're a very young team that's one more year together and 1 year older and naturally going to progress independent of anything else just by the very nature of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Vieira was the best manager last season. I think, did he win Manager of the Year? He probably didn't, but he should have if he didn't.
He was nominated. Klopp got it, didn't he?
I think Klopp might have got it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I never pay attention to whoever actually wins it, but he was, I think, what he did last year was incredible.
Yeah, no one expected it. No one expected him to be that good. And
no one expected Palace to be that good.
I took umbrage always with the "we'll be sorry we don't have Roy Hodgson" because A, I watched the team under him, and B, the stats were all there that we should have been gone for like 2, if not 3 seasons in a row. We deserve to be relegated. It's just a fact. And so I didn't agree with that part. However, the flip side was I'd never thought we'd perform anywhere near as well as we did. I mean, I've kind of said enough. What about you guys kind of coming in and thinking about what you predict from Palace this year?
I mean, I have them 7th, and I stand by that. If anything... No, yeah, I stand by 7th. I can't really put them above any of the big 6 as much as I want to. I almost put them in 5th in my particular league, I'll have you know. I was like very, very close, just for the cheek. But I think they're the best of the rest. I think that outside of the big 6, they were probably the best team in the league last year. I mean, arguably better than Man United. Maybe not even that arguably. And like, I don't see why they would fall off significantly.
Yeah.
If I do have an area of concern, it is the loss of Conor Gallagher coming back to Chelsea, because he really did do a lot for you guys last year, both in his production and his sort of drawing of other opponent defenders out of space and kind of bombing in late and all that sort of stuff. So how does that affect the tactics? How does that affect the chemistry of the team? I don't know. It might not matter because you have so many good players, but it is a question mark, right? And insofar as we're raising question marks, that is one for me.
I can say what I think based on what I saw last season, and especially the second half of last season, from Conor Gallagher, that his attacking contribution, you cannot question it. His energy and that kind of thing. However, what we gained in him effectively being a 4th attacker, we lost in the midfield. And it's kind of the reason potentially now why I think with his transition to Chelsea, and especially what seems to be, again, I have very limited knowledge of watching this, his deployment in a double pivot, that is setting him up to fail. His
I don't think Tuchel's going to do that.
No, his on-ball numbers are shit. He was in versus midfielders last year. He was in the 13th percentile for passes attempted, and the 14th percentile for passes completed. So like he doesn't pass, and when he does, he fucks it up.
Yeah.
But what you did get was high energy and a high press. So if he is ever going to be deployed in a free role, which at Chelsea he will not because Mason Mount exists, that's there. So what I think we lose in Conor Gallagher, we gain in Eze being that player who can be on the ball, who does control it, who can make things tick over, who can be deployed as an 8, moving up into a 10 in attack. Conor Gallagher always looked lost if he found himself in a 10 position, and the passing numbers show that and show why. His distribution wasn't there.
Eze only started 6 games last season. You know,
that's it? Just 6?
Yeah. Well, he came back from an ACL.
Holy shit.
He came back from an ACL.
Okay, so I'm putting Palace at 5th. Let me revise.
It's like having a new player. So I know they're losing
really
Conor Gallagher,
is.
but it's honestly like having a new player.
So Ian, you're the one that has him lowest in the particular league. You have him 11th. Make the downside case here. Why do you not
can't
think
really. I think I probably went low there. That's because I don't know. 11th in my head felt like progression, but of course she finished 12th last season. Now that was overachieving. Well,
that's progression.
Was overachieving. Yeah, exactly. It was overachieving based on what most people thought they'd do, but clearly the numbers show that it wasn't. It was in no way unwarranted. So that makes me feel like I've gone low. So I'm not going to make a downside case, to be honest, because I think you've got another season with Anderson, who's great. You know, you've got. I didn't realise that Mitchell got so many minutes for you last season. Yeah. In my head, he was like a sort of more of a bit part player who's one for the future. But
thank fuck Van Aanholt went, because Van Aanholt was holding him back the entire time.
Well, there you go. Yeah, so I think 11th is churlish, and I probably should.
I mean, if we're not necessarily going to focus on these teams a big amount, but I think it's worth mentioning teams like that sit in that cluster of West Ham, Leicester, Brighton, Wolves, Newcastle, I guess Villa, Southampton, that it's whether you see the improvement at Palace being more than them. I mean, Leicester at the minute, I've mentioned it a few times on pre-season pods, they're still the only team that hasn't signed a player. So they're in a bit of trouble. West Ham have made some great moves and have Scamacca coming now on a medical, as well as a few others potentially. So they've also got European competition again. Brighton... For Brighton, there's the Cucurella saga that's going on. They've lost Basuma, who was obviously very highly rated. They've lost their director of football, who had the joined-up thinking to go to Newcastle. Newcastle, who now therefore have more of a joined-up thinking and the cash to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
Villa, who they made great moves and early. We're forgetting about them. Coutinho on a permanent, Diego Carlos, Boubacar Kamara.
They're the big one for me. Villa are the ones that could make the biggest jump into the European conversation because, especially the second half of last season, they were very good.
Yeah.
For a mid-table team, and we're going to see that. We're going to continue to see that. Coutinho, especially, being huge for them.
Yeah. And then you've got complete unknown quantities in Southampton finally spending a load of money and getting loads of new players. Who knows?
They'll get relegated.
Everton, Leeds,
get relegated.
It could get relegated or could somehow end up, so there's a lot of uncertainty there, and it's always who knows, and you can make a lot of justifications. Mine is obviously team bias. That I think we're great, and I want to be positive and see that this year. And we're fun. We've had a bit of an odd one in pre-season because our squads effectively had to be completely split because it turns out a lot of our players aren't vaccinated, I guess, which is disappointing.
Get vaccinated.
Who knows what their reasons are for that or not, but it's not something that I necessarily agree with, but they aren't coming out and being staunchly promoting not being vaccinated, I guess, is the takeaway you can have. And so it's made for a really weird experience where we travelled Singapore and Australia and played Liverpool, Man United and Leeds with effectively our under-23s and I'd argue 3 of our starting 11, and then the rest of our starting 11 and our new signings stayed at home and played Ipswich, Gillingham, QPR and scored 11 goals and conceded 2. And now they're all kind of coming together. So we've had a weird thing that our pre-season has actually been 8 or 9 games.
That is weird, yeah.
So 3 different pre-seasons.
So way more players have had way more minutes, with the caveat that they haven't necessarily all played together. But it's very much the attack were back home. Your Eze's, Zaha's, Elise's, Mark Guerhi, Czech Decore, and Christian Benteke. And then Edouard, Mateta, Mitchell, Anderson, Guaita were off on tour. So it's going to be interesting. It's really, really interesting. And we've got Arsenal opening day of the season under the lights of Selhurst on a Friday night.
I was dead happy when I saw that as the opening fixture.
Oh, me too, man. But I mean, Arsenal are a different thing this season, but we're really going to test.
That's going to be a fun game, though. That's a
big
fun
test
game.
for them. That young team, like we said, they buckled under Brentford last year. They buckled.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. They're well, they've had opening night jitters before, and that'll be in their head. It's impossible not to be. So yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be fucking electric.
All right, well, let's transition then to the other... We're skipping Brighton, right? Fuck Brighton. They barely technically had a positive expected goal difference, but I have no thoughts on them whatsoever.
I don't know really what you would want me to say.
Okay, perfect. Just fuck them. Fuck them, they're shit. But let's go to technically had a positive expected goal difference on 0.3. So very technically... was Manchester United, 58 points, 0 goal difference, 0.3 expected goal difference, finished 6th, 35 points short of first, 13 points short of fourth. Chuck, you have them 7th, Ian, you have them 6th, I have them 5th. 2 major transfers in, and that's Lisandro Martinez and Christian Eriksen. and quite a few names out, Paul Pogba being the biggest one there, but also Jesse Lingard and a couple of old heads just clearing the way. Some old favorites for me, Nemanja Matic, Juan Mata, and Edison Cavani. Not really important to them in any level whatsoever, but reason I think that they'll be much better, the new manager and potentially the addition by subtraction of Ronaldo. Obviously in his whole transfer saga, he who shall not be named, this summer. I have them in 5th. I think they're just going to be better. I think that they have the talent to be a top 4 team. And they have not been able to live up to that potential and that talent in recent times for reasons. But I do think that at some point it's going to make sense, and they have a pretty good manager now. Tell me 6th and 7th. You guys don't have them pushing for top 4 at all, really. So sell me on why they still are going to suck. Ian?
I just don't see enough positives. I don't think over where other teams have largely had positive summers. I think only Chelsea being as yet in the balance. Everyone else had positive. Chelsea in the balance. Man United, I'm not sure it is positive. I think Ten Hag is obviously interesting, but everything about him is intense. And this current crop of Man United players have not responded well to intensity at all. They've down tools figuratively whenever they've been pushed and whenever the chips have been down. And Ten Hag, while he's done obviously very well at Ajax, the Eredivisie is not the Premier League. I don't know what to think about him yet, and obviously this could be a stage in his progression as a manager. But I don't know whether this group of players will be able to do what he wants them to do. I'm annoyed at Man United for robbing us of Pogba's potentially best years. I think that just annoys me. They deployed him badly. I don't know. I don't see enough positives to make me think, oh, Man United they're gonna push on and be much better this season. It's how do they respond to Ten Hag's methods? That's going to be key. I think one player who might do well under him is certainly in comparison is Sancho, because obviously he didn't set the world alight, and I think he's got a decent work ethic, and I think he could probably do well under Ten Hag, so that could be really interesting. He who must not be named is currently, as you say, involved in brinksmanship, or I don't know what, to be honest, with Man United. Obviously he still wants to, I guess, win things and play, but I don't know. We've said before, his situation is very odd. He simultaneously made Man United worse and got them out of the shit so many times. It was a sort of bizarre situation. But yeah, I don't see universal positives from Man United, so I'm willing to say they stay pretty much the same.
Fair enough. What about you, Chuck?
Yeah, I think you can kind of see what they're doing with their signings at the minute. I mean, they're all Dutch connected. Eriksen. Yeah, I mean, we haven't mentioned Christian Eriksen yet. It makes me so sad that he went there. Like,
yeah. I know. I like him so much.
It's fucking Luke Skywalker going for work experience at the Death Star. You know what I mean? Like, he had so much opportunity and to not go towards the light. Sorry, that's that's maybe that awkward.
Yeah, but rephrase that one. I think
no, that's staying in. But it just. He's going to have a decent impact because he's a quality player, and I don't like that. And he's also a player I like at a club that I really fucking hate. But he played for Ajax previously. I'm almost sure of it. Lisandro Martinez is obviously coming from Ajax. God knows what's happening with the Frenkie de Jong saga. Everyone's been convinced of every outcome happening. Man United are convinced he's going there. Barcelona are convinced he's getting a pay cut, and Frenkie's convinced he's actually going to get paid, which he won't. And so then that then bringing in enough people that understand to Tyrell Malacia as well, who's come from Feyenoord. I can't remember if I just mentioned him. Again, Dutch, understands the total football, and just having enough of those people impregnated in various parts of the teams, as well as capitalising on a Sancho that might be looking for another fresh start within the team. I guess that's kind of got to be their main thing. Martial and Rashford have been performing in pre-season for what that's worth.
Yeah, unlocking Rashford could be
he's looking good.
I think yeah.
He's looking good, and he's just a lovely bloody bloke, so you do want him to do well. But also,
I'll pull for him individually, absolutely.
I mean, also I've seen like how much overhyping they are of it. You know, they run a passing drill, and they're like, "Oh, look what Ten Hag's got them doing!" Like, you're passing. You know, they undoubtedly they're putting in more effort and putting in more energy. I saw that in the Palace game, but from physically watching the Palace game, knowing the context, knowing the players we had, and then looking at the Twitter discourse, like this 1-on-1 did not make two. They aren't. I don't think they're improved. Of course they are. They're going to improve over the season. Of course they are, but they're not as far down the line, let's say, as Arsenal. Nowhere near as far down the line as Tottenham. And they're relying on Chelsea falling off big time as well in order to stay relevant, I guess.
Yeah, really falling as well.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I think we're looking at... I'll leave it here. They might lose their top scorer, and their third highest scorer last season was Mason Greenwood.
Oof.
I mean,
if I'm making the upside case, because I have them the highest, I have them in 5th.
Here he goes, Red Devils
and
advocate.
again, I'm reconsidering that. I probably should have had Arsenal at 5th. But the upside case is the addition by subtraction of he who shall not be named, and how he did score goals but contributed nothing else and made everyone else around him much worse. And like at some point, like statistically, the wages that they play and the level of talent that they have in their player pool will, just by accident, if nothing else, click at some point. And Jadon Sancho is like such a good player, and they haven't gotten anything out of him.
No, that's true.
Like the players are there that if they can figure it out, they are a top 4 in terms of the talent. They could be a top 4 team easily.
Definitely, but these variance things can last. Can last years, you know.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
The dips
absolutely.
can last years. So we could be looking at a sort of, you know, a drop down into mid-table for a couple of years, and then it comes good. Who knows? Or it all collapses because the debt is unsustainable. You know, who knows?
Yeah, all right, fair enough. Shall we talk about the promoted teams and just kind of quickly go over where they're at, what we think about them?
Not Bournemouth.
Yeah, we should touch. We should touch on the promoted teams. He says not Bournemouth. And I think actually Bournemouth is probably the one you could easily skip because I don't see them making any impact at all.
Oh, plucky little Bournemouth. Spent a load of money before. Had Eddie Howe. Oh, got their Russian oligarch owner. Wonder why they're not spending a load of money.
Well, yeah, quite. And I'm not convinced by... Scott Parker at all,
nope.
Who has either got promoted or relegated in every season as a manager. He's never just stayed in the same league.
Oh my God, why is he not at Norwich?
Yeah, he feels like he should be, Norwich or Fulham, but no, Bournemouth.
Surely that would be like the two waves would then therefore cancel each other out. And they could actually stay sustained. They could
be in a division between the Championship and the Premier League.
Parker's in a down year whilst Norwich are on an up year. We just cancel each other out like those cruise ships that have the... But anyway, science. Bournemouth are fucking shit. But they've got a Peterborough player, Siriki Dembele. That's good. You got him in the Premier League. Yeah.
Do you know what? I'd actually forgotten that. I forgot he went to Bournemouth. Yeah. He is a decent player. I don't think he's Premier League standard. But he's a decent player, but he's Bournemouth standard, but not Premier League standard.
So we should say for the listeners that are like me and only know about the big teams, the 3 promoted sides, there's 2 yo-yo clubs in Fulham and Bournemouth. Up and down, up and down. That's what a yo-yo club is. For any new fans of the Premier League, they get promoted, they get relegated back and forth a lot. And one team that hasn't been up here in fucking forever, and that is Nottingham Forest, who are probably not good enough to do anything, if we're being honest, as much as that hurts to say out loud, Mark Davern.
Bit of an unknown quantity with the amount of people they've brought in.
They barely snuck in. They weren't even the 3rd best team in the...
Yeah, but that don't matter because they're in. They're in. Doesn't matter.
They are in, yeah, but they were worse than Huddersfield.
Who were an incredible surprise in the Championship, to be fair. But yeah, you're absolutely right. But that's the playoffs for you.
Huddersfield were tipped for relegation last season, I think, and they nearly got automatic promotion, which is unbelievable. That's big. That gives me Mad Palace vibes because the season we got promoted, we were tipped for relegation as well.
So, which of the three is most likely to stay up, and which of the three is the most locked to go back down?
Well,
do you think?
I'm almost certain all three of us have Bournemouth at 20th. Ian's the only one who has tipped all three promoted sides to go down.
Yeah, it's tricky for me. I'll very briefly explain why. I think probably Fulham have got the best chance of staying up just because of general pedigree. But Nottingham Forest are a bit of an unknown quantity. They've bought lots of good players. It could be really good for Nottingham Forest. They could do a Brentford. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. But I have got them all three to go down. But then I think you've got the likes of Southampton, who I think Hasenhüttl might be done, and Leeds. I like Leeds. I like Jesse Marsch, but I just don't know whether he'll be able to, after losing the players they've lost.
Yeah, Calvin Phillips is such a big loss for them.
And Rafinha.
Huge, and Rafinha, who's their top goal scorer. It's just, I don't know. I think they might struggle. Everton, who Frank Lampard continues to get a free pass from the media for some reason, but they definitely could get sucked in. Brentford could get sucked in as well because they only improved massively after Ericsson. So sorry, I'm giving you a very quick pitted thing, but
no, let's have it.
The basics is I think that the Premier League is the mid table is so hard to get into now because of all the money we've talked about and that filtering down that I think it's almost impenetrable. I think Fulham have just got the best chance, and Nottingham Forest are a wild card.
Is Mitro the difference there? Is that why you think? 43 goals, destroying records in the championship.
I'm gonna say here, and this hurts because on a personal, emotional level, like I want Fulham to stay up, but they still haven't really improved enough, I don't think, from the championship. And I still have no faith in Marco Silva as a manager. I remember him getting relegated with Hull. He then went to Watford and was okay for a little bit until then Everton talk came about, and then he was awful. And then he went to Everton and he was awful. And so I don't have faith in him as a manager. I've never liked him and I've never really rated him. I think out of the three, I want Fulham to stay up though, but out of the three, I think Forest have the best chance. I think Steve Cooper is the best manager. I think they've spent big and well to kind of have the best chance of pushing. They also brought in Dean Henderson as a goalkeeper on a loan from Man United.
That's a great one. That's such a good one.
Considering who they lost as well, because obviously their goalie was the hero of the playoff final. And,
three penalties, saved 3 penalties in a penalty shootout, sold. Unreal.
Yeah. But to bring in Henderson, I think that's a great move. Yeah. It's a great move.
And then I think I don't like him as a person. I never will. But the Jesse Lingard deal is at least an interesting enough one and enough of a calculated risk that I think it comes off. And I don't mind
it. Use a year of the Premier League money to pay a wild card. Yeah, but like that, why not? Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Steve Cooper has immense pedigree, especially working with young players. He showed it with the England under-17s. They won the World Cup. He showed it with Swansea. They were fantastic. The second he moved out of Swansea, they dropped off, and it coincided with Forest, who have been so unstable over the years and just wild, even flirting with relegation, I think, at one point.
Just the way they started the season last season, bloody hell.
Yeah, their worst start in their 104 years or whatever it is. Listen to Mark Daffon's episode for more. I think they're the ones.
Me and Mark were talking about being in the relegation scrap early on, in our season, because Peterborough and Nottingham Forest were right down there, and then I had to watch them just ascend above us. It was terrible.
Yeah, I think out of the promoted teams, they're the ones who are going to do the best. And they showed it last year in cup runs. They beat Arsenal. They beat Leicester. They played incredibly well against Liverpool in the FA Cup quarter-final. So, yeah, they're the ones of the promoted teams I back.
All right, there you go. Well, I think that does it for our season preview, just about. Unless you boys have anything last few things to add here.
Well, I think, Chuck, we should maybe plug the Predictor League quickly.
Yeah, a few things. We've mentioned a couple of times. Obviously, we're running a lot of bonus pods. You will have seen them pop up on your timelines, on your various podcast apps. So please give those a listen for all kinds of different conversations we've had with fans of clubs. It's been really, really enjoyable to do.
It's so good to get nothing like a fan's perspective, is there, on a club to make you sort of maybe rethink your own opinions on them, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And, there's a little bit of FPL kind of stuff in there that people are discussing because, a lot of you that are listening and a lot of people that we interact with are kind of FPL inclined, or at least some form of fantasy sport inclined.
And we will be doing a big FPL preview next week, right? That's what our episode is next week?
FPL preview next week, yeah boy. We do have other FPL pods running as part of our Patreon offering, as Oscar mentioned before, patreon.com/Miles Offside Pod. There's all sorts of tiers there. We've rejigged them. You can join us on the Slack. You can get socks. You can get different stat sheets, extra podcasts. There's all sorts of stuff in there, and just kind of joining the community. We'd never claim to be experts, but we just do this because we love it, and we love talking to each other, and we love getting to speak to you. So join us on the Slack if you'd like a less toxic atmosphere than Twitter.
Oh, it's so much nicer.
It's what a wonderful little corner of the internet we've built, honestly. I love our Slack so much.
Yeah, I mean, if you do still hate yourself, you can follow us at Miles Offside Pod on Twitter. And at the moment, there is a pinned tweet on there, which has, as Ian's just mentioned, we've mentioned our predictions throughout, a Google Forms link where you go on there and you just predict where you think each of the 20 teams is going to finish. It's completely free to enter. We'll be doing a prize again, still working it out. We've had a couple of things thrown out. I think, yeah, we'll do like one of those mystery shirt boxes, maybe like a club voucher or something like that. I'm just laying it down now. Ian doesn't like when I do these things on there because then, he's the money man.
Just pins us to it.
Yeah, exactly. And for the first time, we have a Patreon FPL league as well. But the first time this season, we're running just an open league for all of you listening, sharing that out. So if you do want to join, the auto link again is in the pinned tweet, or you can enter the league code, which is DG63MA. Enter that on your fantasy Premier League and join us. Join
so professional
us. What else is there? Anything else? No? That's it. Outro.
I'll be the quiz wizard this year.
Yeah,
so look out for
we're going to be running quizzes. Look forward to loads of extra content coming your way. All sorts, Star Wars previews. Premier League is back, baby. Say goodbye, Oscar.
Bye.
And say goodbye, Ian.
Bye.
And as we begin our 5th season, thanks again to our wonderful producers. That is Nate, Johnny, Mark, Sam, Jeff, and Andy Penpraise.